All right, to speak now to Gloria Kente, who's an organizer for the South African Domestic Services and Allied Workers Union. She joins us now. A very good evening to you, Ms. Kente, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So I just want to first get a picture of, so there is a national living basic minimum wage, and I want to understand, is there a gap between that, the national minimum living wage, and what domestic workers earn currently?
What do you want to know? Can you come again, sorry?
So the national minimum living wage and what domestic workers earn. Is there a difference? Are they the same? Because I want us to understand this increase within this context, because there's some who are saying that this increase came in higher than expected.
Okay. The increase as a union, we don't see it's higher. We see as a benefit to the domestic workers, because we were, most of the time, we were excluded in the national minimum wage. So to see our wages growing, our salary are going up, we're feeling like we are very happy for that.
And as we mentioned at the beginning, that the increase means that for workers who are working something in the region of 160 hours a month, that should be 4,100, and for some who are working 195 hours, that could go up to as high as 4,957. Do employers, when there is an increase in workers' wages, particularly domestic workers, do they respect these increases?
The employers, they don't respect those increases. There are many domestic workers that are coming to our offices since the national minimum wage domestic workers were included. They complain about that. The employers are not complying with the national minimum wage. We were worried even now when we see that now there's a new increase. We said, yes, we can welcome it, but we know that the employers are not going to comply. But also we are looking at the Department of Labor, because the Department of Labor is supposed to enforce the employers to apply to the law. But the Department of Labor, they are pulling their feet. When we meet with them about that, they said they don't have enough officials like inspectors to go and inspect in the domestic workers' workplaces.
And I'm just wondering, because a lot of domestic workers, at least from what I have seen, learned and experienced, it's often such an informal arrangement that not a lot of employers will actually make sure that their domestic workers are formalized, signing them up for UIF, or even just having a contract that discusses the hours, the pay, etc.
Yeah, even that the contract, and also the UIF, the domestic workers are still struggling to be registered by their employers. And also the contract, the employers doesn't give them the contract. Although we are giving them the education that they must speak with their employers about the UIF, the registration, and also the contract. Because the contract is the guidance of the domestic workers. What are you going to do at your workplace? But the employers doesn't comply even on that. They don't give the domestic workers. The domestic worker have to come to us, and also us, we have to speak with the employers and enforce the employer domestic workers and sign the contract with the domestic workers. And also they work with the Department of Labor to go and report the employers.
Ms. Kente, we'll come back to this issue of working conditions and how better to improve them, not only for the employee, but for the employer as well. I was just looking at the figures in terms of inflation. I mean, it's gone up 13.4% in January. And I'm talking about food inflation here. And I believe that domestic workers, according to a study, that food purchases make up a large portion of the household's income spending. So roughly how much do they spend on transport and on food? And I'm not even going to include rent and all of those important things, just so that employers understand what they're doing when they're not paying domestic workers what they ought to.
Yeah. We also worried about the high prices of the food and also transport. As all we know now, next month in April, the electricity is going up. So the domestic workers are really struggling. They don't know even how to budget now with their salaries because everything is going up. So, and also if they have food at home like meat, because of this load shedding is taking them back now, not forward, because you buy meat and then there's no electricity and the food, your meat is getting rotten in the fridge. So the domestic workers are facing a lot of challenges about these food prices and the transport, and also the children must go to school, they must pay school fees on this salary that they are earning.
Just finally, what is the best advice that you obviously have members, but do those members work for individual employers? And if you are a potential employer or an employer, is it better to hire somebody from an agency, or how do you get a better experience if you're talking with an individual and you want to make sure that there is fairness on both sides? That I'm paying my domestic worker what I should be paying them for the hours I should be paying them, but that my domestic worker also does what is agreed to.
I would say that those who are working as individuals, we as a union, it's easy for us to negotiate with the employers about the increase, about the conditions of work. It's better, but when they get a job from the agencies, sometimes it's not easy for them because the agent, they call it's an employer, and then the employer that we think is employer where the domestic worker is working, it's a client. So it's not easy for the domestic worker to negotiate. But when the domestic worker is working as an individual, it's easy because they come to us and then we negotiate with the employer. And also the agencies, when we are looking for them, when the domestic workers coming in our office, because we don't chase them away, it's not easy even to find them to come and sit down with us so we can solve the problem that is affecting the domestic worker.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Ms. Gloria Kente, who is an organizer for the South African Domestic Services and Allied Workers Union.